Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. The federal trial of accused Sarah Lawrence college cult leader.
The prosecutor summed it up with 3 words: sex, money, and power.
Our Adam Klasfeld has the latest from the courthouse. Plus, the deaths of Lauren Smith-Fiels and Brenda Lee Rawls.
I said to my sister, if Brenda died, we would have been notified. And if she did, where is she?
A new bill is proposed to streamline death notification protocol. And inside the courtroom for the sentencing hearing of TV actor Jussie Smollett. But first, famed Black Panther director Ryan Coogler is arrested for withdrawing money from his own account.
What's going on, my man? I'm trying to put money on my own.
Yo, you are. Put it in good.
Law and Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmeyer along with Terry Austin. We begin with news out of Atlanta, where a famed Hollywood director is falsely arrested for robbing a bank.
That's right, Brian. It happened back in January when Black Panther director Ryan Coogler attempted to withdraw $12,000 from a Bank of America branch. After that, he was arrested. Body camera footage of the incident was released just this week. It shows officials arresting Coogler after a 911 call about the alleged robbery. According to police reports, when Coogler approached the desk for the $12,000 withdrawal, he gave the teller a note requesting the money be counted discreetly. The teller, later identified as a pregnant Black woman, said there was an alert on his account. She told her boss she believed he was attempting to rob the bank. After that, authorities arrived on scene to arrest Coogler. He and his colleagues, who were waiting for him in a parked car outside, were detained. Body camera footage shows Coogler explaining to police why he asked for the cash withdrawal via a written note.
Basically, we got a call, and from what we got the call, it seemed like someone was trying to rob the bank. Something about you passing a note to the teller, something to that effect. Can you just tell me what's going on? Or?
It's a medical assistant that works in my house that prefers to be paid in cash. Every time I make a withdrawal to pay her, you know, because it's a large amount, she works a lot.
Yeah.
You know, if I don't write down on a note how much I want out, and then I don't want it ran through the money counter right there at the desk, the whole bank ends up looking at me because they just hearing money going through the account, and I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe getting money out like that. So every time I go to withdraw it, you know, I put the amount, the account I want it taken out of, and I put my own card in, and then they usually take me like always just get the money from me. You know what I'm saying?
Coogler was released shortly after he was arrested. At the time, he did present his ID and bank card to the teller. Brian?
Thanks, Terry. Joining us today is former Chicago area detective and SWAT member Lisa Lockwood. Lisa, where did this interaction go wrong with Coogler, and could it have been corrected?
It sure can, and it comes down to training. So she was given a note, but she was also given identification and a bank card. The note made her skeptical and a little concerned, but the problem was when she pulled up his actual account, she said there was an alert. Nobody knows what that alert was that flagged him for whatever reason. And she passed that information on to her managers, and then 911 was called. So I'm still in the dark regarding what was the alert that made it appear to be that this was a potential robbery in progress. And police responded adequately. They showed up because they said somebody passed a note. And as they were ascertaining what was happening, the ability to look at the video footage, they needed to make sure everyone was safe, because it's very rare that you have somebody who's burglarizing a bank, holding up a bank, who does not have a weapon. So to go ahead and cuff him and walk him outside and continue with the investigation is all part of protocol.
Now, Terry, we've talked a lot about this case. What's your reaction to this situation as we learn more and more?
You know, it's unfortunate, Brian, to say the least. It seems like a case of racial profiling, even though the teller was an African-American woman, and she basically just came to the conclusion that Coogler was withdrawing money and he was trying to steal from the bank, even though this was from his own account, even though he had his ID, he had his bank card. He didn't ask the teller to give him all the money. He asked for his own money. So I definitely think that she jumped to conclusion. I agree with Lisa. He should have been trained better. And I think it would be interesting to see how many times 911 has been called in instances like this.
Yeah, and I think Lisa brings up a good point too. I want to see what the alert is, because if it's an alert that's just flagged, but he has an account at the bank and he has that much money in the bank account, then why call the police? Alerts, I don't have $12,000 to take out of an account, so I don't know what alert comes up, but we'll see how it plays out as we get more and more information. And what's expected to be a lengthy jury selection process continues Thursday in the federal trial of disgraced Theranos COO, Ramesh Sunny Balwani. Thursday marks day 2 of jury selection for Balwani, who faces 12 federal fraud charges in relation to his time with the now-defunct company Theranos, founded by now-convicted fraudster Elizabeth Holmes. Theranos was touted as a company that would revolutionize blood testing with its state-of-the-art Edison device. Later, tests found many problems with the device. In a federal trial spanning months, Holmes pointed the finger at Balwani, her former boyfriend and Theranos business partner. Holmes testified that Balwani emotionally and physically abused her. Prosecutors countered, saying Holmes knew about the company's issues and lied her way into millions of dollars. In January, a federal jury found Holmes guilty on multiple counts. In Balwani's case, multiple jurors have already been dismissed for potential bias based on the lengthy and highly publicized Holmes trial. Balwani has pled not guilty to all charges. His trial is also expected to last for months. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, family members of late Lauren Smith-Fiels and Brenda Lee Rawls call for new legislation in the wake of their loved ones' deaths. But first, the Jussie Smollett sentencing hearing. We take you inside the courtroom for the first time.
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our Law and Crime followers on YouTube. You can now get the live Law and Crime Network with YouTubeTV for all of your daily live trial coverage, legal news, expert analysis, and original true crime programs. Subscribe to YouTubeTV today and then locate Law and Crime in the channel guide. And for only $1.99 a month, you can add the network to your bundle. Watch Law and Crime every day with YouTubeTV. We put you in the jury box.
Welcome back to Law and Crime Daily. Actor Jussie Smollett was back in court. He was once a rising star. Now he's a convicted felon for claiming he was the victim of a hate crime. A jury found it was all a lie. Law and Crime's Anjanette Levy is here with what happened in court. Anjanette?
Brian, this hearing started with Jussie Smollett's defense attorneys asking for a new trial. They say his conviction should be thrown out because his rights were violated on a number of fronts. Smallett appeared in a Cook County courtroom with a number of supporters and family members. A jury convicted Smallett last year of 5 of 6 counts of disorderly conduct after finding he claimed he had been the victim of a hate crime and enlisted 2 brothers to help him. Smallett told police he was attacked by 2 men wearing red Make America Great Again hats and that they put a noose around his neck and poured bleach on him. The story captured the attention of millions across the country, and Chicago police said they actually spent $130,000 in overtime to investigate the hoax. Smallett testified in his own defense, but the jury didn't buy his story. Judge James Lynn heard lengthy arguments from both sides.
The double jeopardy clause does not just prohibit double prosecutions, it also prohibits double punishment. And to punish somebody twice for the same thing is a violation of the Fifth Amendment. And here, Mr. Smallett was clearly punished in the prior criminal proceedings by the imposition of a criminal penalty. Now, certain people may disagree with the severity of that punishment. They may not think that was a just result, but it doesn't take away from the fact that he was criminally punished.
Your Honor, Ms. Glandian is entitled to her own argument. What she is not entitled to is her own facts. She stood before this court and told you they raised the issue of David Elgaby's direct examination. Nowhere in this 83-page motions did they ever make a single complaint about the examination of David Elgaby. Ms. Glandian stood before this court and told you that they made a motion to recuse the whole Office of Special Prosecutor, Mr. Webb, myself, Mr. Weaver. Nowhere at trial or in this paper is there such a motion.
And a special prosecutor actually ended up handling this case. One of those special prosecutors said in court that was because the confidence of the community had been shaken in the original handling of this case by the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. Judge Lynn declined and denied that request for a new trial. After that, there was a lengthy sentencing hearing. More on that on the next edition of Law and Crime Daily. Brian.
Thanks, Anjanette. Let's bring back former Detective Lisa Lockwood and Terry Austin to discuss the sentencing of Jussie Smollett. Terry, the defense started its arguments, as we heard from Anjanette, with prosecutorial misconduct and judicial as well as trial errors, requesting a dismissal or new trial. Could we see another Bill Cosby outcome on appeal in this case?
It's possible, but I don't think it's probable. I think that the defense did a great job at setting forth all of those arguments for a new trial, but the judge would not hear it. He said he had already made decisions on all of those issues. There was no prosecutorial misconduct. He said that there was no way that he abused any of his discretion as far as the jury instructions were concerned. So I think some of those same arguments would hold over for an appeal. You have to have a legal error for an appeal. And I don't think that she articulated any legal areas where the judge in the appellate level could overturn what was going on. So I don't see a ground for appeal here. I think the judge really made some solid decisions, and I think all of those issues have been argued to the greatest lengths, including at this hearing.
Yeah. Now, Lisa, guilty of 5 of 6 charges, I think up to 3 years on each charge. So what do you think is the right sentence here? And do you think any of these impact statements are affecting the judge?
I would imagine yes, as far as the impact statements, because you have a man who has never been arrested, no criminal background. He's a celebrity. He's on television, and everybody's talking about the good that he does. But if we go back to the other scenario of committing this hate crime, this hoax, the national attention that it garnered, the media tour that he went on talking about this thing happening to him, which turned out to be a hoax in itself, the racial tensions, the political tensions, the gay community tensions, it just went on and on. Ideally, I would say if I were a judge sitting there, of course, reimburse the Chicago Police Department for all the extra work and labor that took them away from doing what they should have been doing on the street, $130,000 and a minimum of 6 months.
All right, Anjanette, there was an argument Smallett's attorney made for a new trial that seemed a little odd. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was interesting because she was saying he didn't have a public trial. And the judge responded to that by saying, this was the first trial I had during COVID, and the media wanted cameras in here, and the defense, Jussie Smollett and his attorneys said, no, we don't want cameras in the courtroom. The judge said that the media was allowed in the courtroom, and then the special prosecutor also said, look, the whole world could have watched this thing had there been cameras allowed in the courtroom. So it was kind of interesting for a TV star to not want a camera in the courtroom for his trial.
Yeah, the back and forth on that is interesting. Of course, we're still keeping eyes on the Jussie Smollett sentencing. I kind of agree with Lisa. Maybe some amount of months may be handed down here, but of course, as it drops, we will be here to give you the updates. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, testimony begins in the federal trial for accused Sarah Lawrence sex cult leader Lawrence Ray in New York City. Our own Adam Klasfeld reports from the courthouse. Plus, the deaths of Lauren Smith-Fiels and Brenda Lee Rawls. Why the families of both women are calling for new laws in the state of Connecticut. Welcome back. After 2 Connecticut women died, their families say police never notified them. Now, lawmakers are getting involved in hopes new legislation can prevent similar situations in the future. 2 black women, Lauren Smith-Field and Brenda Lee Rawls, were both found dead on the same day in the same city of Bridgeport, Connecticut last December. Smith-Field and Rawls' deaths were ruled accidental, but their families say the circumstances are questionable. Both families have criticized law enforcement for failing to notify them about their deaths. The Bridgeport Police Department is undergoing an internal investigation for how the cases were handled. Connecticut state lawmakers have now proposed a bill which, if passed, would mandate officers to notify next of kin within 24 hours of a deceased person being discovered. The bill was the topic of a public hearing before Judiciary Committee on Wednesday. Family members of both women had the opportunity to speak.
I support this bill with the hope that no other family will have to go through the following. Tuesday, December the 14th, 2021, my daughter Jessica came to my home and told me that they were going looking for my sister, Brenda Lee Ross. Later on that evening, my sister Angie called me and said, the guy Brenda was with said she died Sunday morning, December 12th, 2021, at his house, and the coroners came and got her body. Through the family's own efforts of frantically calling around Bridgeport, we found out that Brenda's body was at the medical examiner's office. My family was never notified by the Bridgeport Police Department that my sister passed. My family never got the opportunity to identify my sister's body.
Let's bring back former Detective Lisa Lockwood and co-host Terry Austin as you look at this proposed law in response to the death of these two women. Terry, is it somewhat shocking or odd that there are no rules about notifying families of deaths? And does this proposed law fix that problem?
Well, it really is shocking. You would think that there were some procedures or protocols when you have a death that the police or authorities or medical examiner or someone is supposed to notify the next of kin. It's not as though they didn't ID the body. They knew the name of the individuals, both Smith-Fiels and Brenda Lee Rawls. So I am surprised that there is no protocol in place in terms of how long you should wait before you notify someone. And I think the law will help solve the problem, but not totally, because the whole issue is this cultural bias, the fact that, and we don't know how many times they have not notified others, but if it's because of the race, that's a problem. They need to make sure they treat all of the victims the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Lisa, all right, former SWAT, former detective, veteran, your experience goes on, but so what are some of the procedures and rules that you have seen about notifying family when someone has been either killed or died?
Departments do have protocols and policies. There's not a bill that requires you to do it in a certain way. That just comes down to training and how you're trained on your job in your particular agency. Agencies have it set up to where is you make notification in a prompt and courteous way in person with two officers as soon as you find out who the next of kin are. A lot of times the news media gets access to it faster than a notification can be made because they're having difficulty with the identification. So it's important. Yes, this bill is important because obviously Bridgeport, Connecticut definitely dropped the ball.
All right, we'll see how this bill affects how Bridgeport, Connecticut, and maybe other cities around the country go forward with notifying next of kin that their loved ones have been lost to them. Thank you both. When we come back, the Sarah Lawrence sex cult federal trial, Law&Crime's Adam Klasfeld reports as both sides present opening statements in the high-profile case of Lawrence Ray. Welcome back to Law&Crime Daily. Opening statements are presented in federal court as the accused Sarah Lawrence college cult leader Lawrence Ray stands trial on charges of abuse and extortion. The allegations date back to 2010 when former Wall Street trader Lawrence Ray moved into his daughter's on-campus housing at Sarah Lawrence. After that, officials say he gained control over his daughter's friends, presenting himself as a father figure and holding group therapy sessions. Over the next 10 years, he allegedly extorted money from the students, isolated them from their families, and even forced some into prostitution. His alleged crimes were investigated after authorities caught wind of a 2019 New York Magazine article revealing the abuse and manipulation. Ray faces a 17-count indictment, including charges of racketeering, sex trafficking, forced labor, money laundering, and tax evasion. A jury was seated on Wednesday, followed by opening statements on Thursday. Law&Crime Network's own Adam Klasfeld was at the federal courthouse Thursday. He joins us now to break down how both sides laid out their cases in opening statements.
The opening statement of the prosecution started with a scene from October 16th, 2018, that began at a Midtown motel where prosecutors say he essentially put one of these students through a long night of torture to force her into prostitution. Said that he made millions on this scheme. The defense is trying to characterize this as something out of Lewis Carroll, that this is going through the looking glass and that Ray was a master storyteller and that the students were fully invested in his stories. One of the quotes that she said, essentially that this was not a criminal enterprise. This was a group of storytellers.
Lisa, an investigation into a case like this must be massive. But is there any part of this case that you think would be the most important to proving Lawrence Ray is guilty?
I would have to say they're going to have to go to the forensics. The most important parts of it are the ads that were taken out in Backpage for the prostitution, the photographs, his telephone, all the data and the text coming forward. These are the things that are going to help prove their case. Without forensics, we don't have anything. Obviously, we need to have our witnesses there, but we're going to be running into difficulty from the person who was the prostitute, from the credibility of their story. Were they extorted? Were they paying money? Were they doing it willingly or unwillingly? So the credibility is going to be attacked without a doubt, as it always is. This guy, to me, is one of the most sinister characters straight from a James Bond movie.
Yeah. Now, Terry, Lisa kind of touched on potential defenses there, credibility of the witness being one of them. But what have we learned about Ray's defense after opening statements?
Well, you know, a lot of times defendants in cases try to say, okay, it wasn't me or I wasn't there. But here he's basically saying that everyone but himself is lying. He's saying that all of these allegations by multiple individuals, all of these victims were stories. He's saying that they conspired against him and they're misguided young adults. And these are friends of his daughter, which makes the case even more difficult to understand. Who would move in to your daughter's dorm? There's something wrong here. And how was he able to extort so much money from each of them? So I think it's an interesting case, to say the least.
Well, they're saying he's a charismatic storyteller, so maybe he'll take the stand. But of course, we'll give you updates as they progress. Well, thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.